Testing, 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 testing. Much love to want you and all, you and yours. And we up here looking at in this part of the series, we going through the book Carter G. Woodson, A Century of Negro Migration. Now this one not fully known the books of Carter G. Woodson is not really talked about when you hear his name pop up. So we decided to go to his ancestor to, get knowledge, wisdom, and understanding about the situation during the time of the Century of Negro Migration. A lot of this stuff here pertains to us, as we in the part 4 of the video, pertains to us today and how we came to the situation we came into and where we are right now. So without further ado, we're going to get into the part 4 of this video, of this series of a Century of Negro Migration. He gives many good facts about the Northwest Territories and how slavery was there, but then again, it wasn't there. And, the little legislations they use to figure us up. Now, as you see, it says chapter 4, a colonization as a remedy for migration. Because of these untoward circumstances, the consequence to the immigration of the free Negroes and the fugitives into the North, their enemies, and in some cases their well-intentioned friends, advocated division among these elements to foreign soil. Benazet and Brannigan had the idea of selling Negroes on public lands in the West, largely to relieve the situation in the North. All right? So they're going to give us the public lands in the West they already stole from the Indians and kick us way out there. Certain anti-slavery men of Kentucky, as we had observed, recommended the same. But this was hardly advocated at all by far-seeing white men after the close of the first quarter of the 19th century. It was by this time very clear that white men would want to occupy all the lands within the present limits of the United States. Few statements dared to encourage migration to Canada because a large number of fugitives had already escaped there, had attached to that region the stigma of being asylum for fugitives from slave states. The most influential people who gave thought to this question finally decided that colonization of the Negro in Africa was the only solution of the problem. The plan of the African colonization appealed more gradually to the people of both North and South than the other efforts, which at best could do no more than offer a local or temporary relief. The African colonizationists proceed on the basis of the Negroes had no chance of racial development in this country. They can only secure no kinds of honorable employment and could not be associated with the congenial white friends whose minds and pursuits might operate as a stimulus upon the industry and could not rise to the level of successful professional or businessmen found around them. In short, they must ever be hewers of woods and drawers of water. And that was by design. Still the same way today. To emphasize the further necessity of immigration to Africa, the advocates of deportation to foreign soil generally refer to the conditions of migrating Negroes as the case in evidence so long as one, you must sit, stand, walk, ride, dwell, eat, sleep here, in the Negro there. He cannot be free in any part of the country. This ideal, working through the minds of Northern men for years thought merely of the injustice of slavery, began to change their attitude towards abolitionists who had never undertaken to solve the problem of Blacks who were seeking refuge. In the North, many thinkers controlling public opinion then gave their audience of colonization in circles once enclosed to them were thereafter open. There was therefore a tendency towards a more systematic effort than had there characterized the endeavors of colonizationists. The subject of their philanthropy were not to be stolen away or hurried off to a non-congenial land for the oppressed. They were in accordance with the ascendancies of the new situation prepared by instructions of mechanical arts, agriculture, science, and biblical literature that might lead some to higher pursuits and others to more skillfully serve their fellows. Private enterprise was at first depended on to carry out the schemes, but it soon became evident that a better method was necessary. Finally, on a proposal of various thinkers and on an actual colonization feats of Paul Cuffey, a Negro came from a national meeting for the purpose held in Washington, D.C., December 1816, and an organization of the American Colonization Society. This meeting was attended by some of the most prominent men in the United States, among whom were Henry Clay, Francis S. Key, Bishop William Meade, John Rudolph, and Judge Bushrod Washington. The American Colonization Society failed to facilitate the movement of free Negroes from the South and did not promote the general welfare of the race. The reasons for these failures are many. In first place, the society of all things to men. To the anti-slavery man, who adored was to dampen the meager results attained by his agitation, the scheme was the next best thing to removing objections of the slaveholders who said they would emancipate their bondsmen if they could be assured of being deported to a foreign soil. To the radical pro-slavery man and to the northern hating the Negro, it was well adapted to rid the country of free persons of colors whom they regarded as pariahs of society. Furthermore, although colonization society became extremely popular and the various states organized branches of it and raised money to promote the movement, the slaveholders, as a majority, never reached a position of parting with their slaves, and the country would not take such radical actions to compel free Negroes to undergo expropriation when militant abolitionists were furious denouncing the scheme. Free people of color themselves were not only not anxious to go, but bored grievously. That anyone should be suggested that they should be driven from the country in which they was born and for the independence of which their fathers died. They held indignation meetings throughout the North to denounce the scheme as a selfish policy, imbecilic, and interests of the people of color. Bringing thus as an invertebrate flow of blacks, both slaves and free, the American Colonization Society effected the deportation of only such Negroes as the Southern masters felt opposed to emancipate from time to time, and few others induced to go. As the Industrial Revolution early changed the aspect of the economic situation in the South as to make slavery seemingly profitable, few masters ever thought of liberating their slaves. Scarcely any intelligent Negro, except those whom economic and religious reasons were interested, availed themselves of this opportunity to go to a land of their ancestors. From the reports of the Colonization Society, we learned that from 1820 to 1833, 2,885 Negroes were sent to Africa by the Society. Furthermore, more than 2,700, of this number was taken from the slave states. About 2/3 of these were slaves manumitted on the condition they will immigrate. Later statistics showed the same tendencies. By 1852, 7,836 had been deported from the United States to Liberia. 2,720 of these were born free. 204 were purchased their freedom. 3,868 was emancipated in the view of going to Liberia, and 1,044 were liberated Africans returned by the United States government. Consider the fact that there were 439 and 495 free persons of color in this country at 1850, and 400,888 and 70,000 in 1860. The colonists saw that there was a very element of the population which the movement was intended to send out of the country had increased rather than decreased. It was clear then that the American Colonization Society, though regarded as a factor to play important in promoting the exodus of free Negroes to foreign soil, was an inglorious failure. Colonization in other quarters, however, was not abandoned. A colony of Negroes in Texas was contemplated in 1833 prior to the time when the Republic became independent of Mexico, as slavery was not yet first assured in that state. The New York Commercial Advisor had no objection to the enterprise, but felt there was a natural obstacles such as a more expensive conveyance than that to Moravia. The high price of land in that country, the Catholic religion to which the Negroes were not accustomed to conform, and the lack of knowledge of the Spanish language. The editor observed that some who migrated to Haiti a few years before had become discontent because they didn't know the language. Louisiana, a slave state, would not suffer near its borders a free Negro republic to serve as an asylum for refugees. The Richmond Whig saw the actual situation and dubbing the scheme as chimerical for the reason that a more unsuitable country for blacks did not exist. Socially and politically, it would never suit the Negroes. Already a great number of ventures from the United States had gone to Texas, and fugitives from justice from Mexico, a fierce and lawless and turbulent class, will give the Negroes little chance there, as Negroes could not contend with the Spanish and the Creole. The editor believed that an inferior race could not exist in a safety surrounded by a superior one, despising them. Colonization in Africa was then urged, and the efforts of the blacks to go elsewhere was categorized as doing missives at every turn to defeat the enlightened plan for the agglomeration of the Negroes. It was still thought possible to induce the Negroes to go to some congenial foreign land, although few of them would agree to immigrate to Africa. Not a few Negroes began during the 2 decades immediately preceding the Civil War to think favorably as Afro colonization, and still a larger number in view of the increasing disabilities fixed upon their classes of thought of migrating to some country near to the United States. Much was said about Central America, but British Guiana and the West Indies proved to be the most inviting fields to the latter-day Negro colonizationists. The idea was by no means new, for Jefferson and his force had had a letter to Governor Edward Coles of Illinois in 1814 showing the possibilities of colonization in the West Indies. He felt because Santo Domingo had become an independent Negro republic, it will offer a solution of the problem as to where the Negroes should be colonized. In this way, these islands would become sort of a safety valve for the United States. He became more and more convinced that all the West Indies will remain in the hands of colored people, and a total expulsion of whites sooner or later would take place. It was high time, he thought, that Americans should foresee the bloody scenes which their children certainly, and possibly themselves, will have to wade through. The movement to the West Indies was accelerated by other factors. After emancipation of those islands in the 30s, there had been for some years a dearth of labor. Designed to enjoy their freedom and living in a climate where there was not much struggle for life, the freemen either refused to work regularly or wandered for about purposely from year to year. The islands in which the sugar once played a conspicuous part in the foundation of their industry declined, and something had to be done to meet this ascendancy. In the 40s and 50s, therefore, there came to the United States a number of labor agents whose aim was to set forth an inviting aspect in the situation into the West Indies as so to induce the free Negroes to try their fortune there. To this end, meetings were held in Baltimore, Philadelphia, New York, and Boston, and even in some cities of the South, where these agents appealed to free Negroes to immigrate. Thus, before the American Colonization Society had got well on its way and accomplished this purpose of deporting Negroes to Africa, the West Indies and British Guiana claimed the attention of free people of color and offering their unusual opportunities in those in the islands in 1839. The English nation came to be regarded by the Negroes of the United States as exclusive friends of the race. The Negro press and church vied for each other in praising British emancipation as an act of thrilling property and pointed to the English dominions as an asylum for the oppressed. So disturbed were the whites by this growing feeling that riots broke out in northern cities on occasions of Negro celebrations of the anniversary of emancipation in the West Indies, which we talked about a big one in Philadelphia in the last chapter, chapter 3. They had a big riot in Philadelphia because the riots had its part in it, but we don't even celebrate it no more. You know what I'm saying? We don't even talk about or celebrate it. In a view of these facts, the colonizationists had to redouble their efforts and defend their cause. They found it little difficult to make good for case for Liberia, a land far away in unhealthy climate, so much unlike the West Indies and British Guyana, where Negroes had been declared citizens entitled to all privileges afforded by the government. The colonizations could do no more than express doubt that the Negroes would have the opportunities for the mental, moral, and social betterment which are offered in Liberia. The promoters of the enterprise in Africa did not believe that the Western Indian planters who had emancipation been forced upon them would accept blacks in the United States as their equals, nor that they had far from receiving the consideration of free men would there be any more manuals. When told the establishment of schools and churches for improvement of the free men, the colonization replied that the schools might be provided, but the planters could have no interest in encouraging the education as they did not want an elevated class of people, but bone and muscle. As the evidence of the truth of this statement is asserted that the newspapers of the country were filled with veracious accounts of falling off of crops and the Secretary of Labor, but had little to say about those forces' instructions and the uplift of the people. An effort was made to show that there was no economic advantage going into British dominions. It was thought that as soon as the first demand for labor was supplied, wages would be reduced, for no new plantations could be opened there, as in the growing of the country. Like Liberia, it would be impossible, therefore, for Negroes migrating there to take up land and develop a class of small farmers as they was doing in Africa. Under such circumstances, they contended, the Negroes in the West Indies could not feel any of the elevating influence of nationality of character, as the white man would limit the influence of the Negro by retaining practically all of the wealth of the islands. The inducements, therefore, offered to free Negroes in the United States were merely intended to use them in supplying the British dominions the needs of men to do the drudgingly, certainly more elevating than the toils of slaves. Determined to the interests of a large number of persons in diverting the attention of the free Negroes from the West Indies, the colonizationists took the higher ground. They asserted that the interests of millions of white men in these countries were then at stakes, and that even if it would be better for 3 million Negroes of the countries gradually to immigrate to British dominions, it would eventually prove prejudicial to show the interests of the United States. They show how Negroes migrating into the West Indies were made to believe that the refusal to extend them here in a social political equality was cruel oppression, and the migrants therefore would carry them no goodwill into this country. When they arrived in the West Indies and their circumstances would increase this hostility, alienating their affections and estrange them wholly from the United States, taught to regard the British as exclusive friends of the race devoted to its elevation, and they will become British in spirit. As such, these Negroes will be controlled by British influence and will increase the wealth and increments of the British, and as soldiers will greatly strengthen British power. It was better, therefore, they argued, to direct the Negroes to Liberia, for those who went there with a feeling of hostilities against white people were placed in the circumstances of operating to remove that feeling, and that the kind of solicitude for their welfare will be extended to them in their new homes, so as to overcome the prejudice and win their confidence and secure their attachment. Looking to this country as their fatherland and a home of their benefactors, the Liberians will develop a nation, taking the religions, customs, and laws of this country as their mottos, and marketing their produce in the country and producing our manufacturers. In spite of this independence, therefore, Liberia will be an American in feeling, language, and interest, affording a means to get rid of a class of undesirables here, but desirable to us in their power to extend American influence, trade, and commerce. Negroes migrated to the West Indies in spite of this warning and protests. Haiti at first was looked upon with a fear of having a free Negro government near slave-holding states, became fixed in the mind of some of the desirables as a place of colonization for free persons of color. This is due to its apparent natural advantages in the soil, climate, and situation of the country over other places of consideration. It was thought this island would support 14 million people, and that once open to immigration to the United States, in a few years it would fill up by a natural increase. It must remember that it was formerly an emporium of the Western world. It supplied both hemispheres with sugar and coffee. It has rapidly recovered from the disaster of the French Revolution and only lacked capital and education, which the United States under these circumstances could furnish. Furthermore, it was argued that something in this direction should immediately be done. As European nations then seeking to establish friendly relations with islands would secure their commercial advantages, which the United States could have and could establish by sending to the island free Negroes, especially devoted to agriculture. In 1836, Z. Kingsley, a Florida planter, actually undertook to carry out such a plan on a small scale. He established on the northeast side of Haiti, near Port Platte, his son George. George Kingsley, a well-educated colored man of industry, industrial habits, and uncorrupt morals. So Kingsley set up his son with a slave named George Kingsley. All right. Together with 6 prime African men slaves liberated for the express of the purpose, he then purchased for them 35,000 acres of land, upon which they engaged in the production of crops indigenous to the soil. Haiti, however, was not to be the only island to get this consideration. In 1834, 200 colored immigrants went from New York alone to Trinidad under their subsistence at the expense of the planters of that island. It was later reported that every one of them had found employment on the day of arrival, and in 1 or 2 instances, the most intelligent were placed overseers. Was placed as overseers. Let's see, hold on. The most intelligent was placed as overseer with a salary of $500 annual. No one received less than $1 a day, and most of them earned $1.50. The Trinidad press welcomed these immigrants and spoke in the highest of terms of the valuable service they rendered to the country. Others followed from year to year. One of these Negroes appreciated so much in this new field of opportunity that he returned and induced 20 intelligence free persons of color living in Annapolis, Maryland, to migrate to Trinidad. The New York Sun reported in 1840 that 160 persons left Philadelphia for Trinidad. They had been hired by an eminent planter to labor on the island and were encouraged to expect that they should have privileges which would make their residence desirable. The editor wished a few dozen Trinidad planters would come to the city on the same business and on a much larger scale. N.W. Pollard, agent of the government of Trinidad, came to Baltimore in 1851 to make his appeal for immigrants, offering to pay all expenses. At the meeting held in Baltimore in 1852, the parents of Mr. Stansbury Boyce, now retired merchant in Washington, D.C., District of Columbia, was also induced to go. They found their opportunities which they had never had before and well established themselves in their new home. The account when Mr. Boyce gives in a letter to the writer corroborates the newspaper reports as a successful enterprise. The New York Journal of Commerce reported in 1841 that according to the advices received at New Orleans from Jamaica, they had arrived at that island 14 Negro migrants from the United States, bearing the first fruits of Mr. Barclay's mission to this country. Much of the larger number of Negroes were expected. Various applications for their services have been received from respectable parties. The produce of the soil was much reported as demand reduced from former years to meet demand for labor. Some freeland from Sierra Leone was induced to immigrate to the island in 1842. Mr. Anderson, an agent of the government of Jamaica, contemplated visiting New York in 1851 to secure a number of laborers, tradesmen, and agricultural settlers. In the course of time, immigration efforts to a foreign land interested a large number of representative Negroes. At a national council called in 1853 to promote more effectively the assimilation of colored people, the question of immigration not only was taken up for serious consideration, but those who desired the introduction of the question of Liberian colonization or who was especially interested in the scheme were not invited. Among the people promoting the council, calling of this council was William Webb, Martin Delany, J. Gold Bias, Franklin Turner, Augustus Green, James M. Whitfield, William Lambert, Henry Bibby, James T. Holly, and Henry M. Collins. Just a sidebar right quick. That immigration of 1853 with Martin Delany, that took place in Cleveland, Ohio. And there on this page, on my YouTube page, you look down there, it's a special section dedicated to that, where they talked about the things they wanted to do and the things they wanted to have done. Okay, let's see what's up with this page. They're developing this assembly. 3 groups. One believing with Martin Delany that it was best to go to the Niger Valley in Africa. Another following the counsel of James M. Whitfield, then interested in the migration to Central America. And a third supporting James T. Holly, who insisted that Haiti offered the best opportunities for free persons of color desiring to lead the United States. Delany was commissioned to proceed to Africa, where he succeeded in continuing treaties with 8 African kings who offered African American Negroes inducements to settle in their respective countries. James Redpath, already interested in the scheme colonization in Haiti, had preceded Holly there, and with the latter as his co-worker, succeeded in sending to that country as many 2,000 migrants, the first of whom sailed from this country in 1861. Owing to the lack of equipment adequacy and establishment of the settlement and a unforgivable client, now more than 1/3 of the migrants remained. Some attention was directed to California and Central America, just as in the case of Africa, but nothing in that direction took tangible forms immediately. And the Civil War following soon thereafter did not give some of these schemes a chance to materialize. And that's the end of that chapter. That's chapter 4. So we're trying to find plays to get up out of here. That's when colonization schemes start coming into effect. Just so y'all know, Lincoln, President Abraham Lincoln, he favored Central America. He wasn't really big on going back to Africa, sending all black folks back to Africa. He was big on sending us to Central America, like British Guyana, which is now known as Honduras, on the Mosquito Coast, where there's a large African population around there. And in the West Indians, the West Indies. So, and have us as a colonization there. That's what he wanted to happen, But all these schemes, as you see, was set up, and we kind of rejected these schemes. Some of us wanted to go, some of us didn't want to go. Trinidad was a new place that we found out about. We knew I'm pretty sure a lot of people knew about Haiti, but how we went to Trinidad, we built up Trinidad and other places like that in the West Indies to get the hell up out of here, But that's how we do it, That's what we about, you know what I'm saying? It's great. Give a shout out to Carter G. Woodson, this wonderful answers that left this wonderful history, so we don't have to, buck our bag or understand what was going on. The thing about it is, as in chapter 4 and these 4 chapters we went through, this country never really wanted us. They wanted to chew us up and spit us out. And even when we had a competition against them, they still favored them, the foreigners, because they was close damn near white to them. Whether it was German, Irish, you know, you name it, any type of form of European. So they already had the pluralness of whiteness already enacted and doing what they was doing. You understand me? That's one thing we got to look at the history. There was always a kind of a us against them. And they always had a definition of our place, which is to be heroes of woods and sower of water. We was never to become professional. And they still have, if you read on this page, and once again, another video on my page, Memorandum 46, and see where Roginski wrote that, we just let a couple of them seem to succeed, so we keep that carrot still going on top of them, you know what I'm saying? Or if you read another thing, another government policy on my page, benign neglect, where we go to tap down the Black people movement, we gonna build up the LGBT movement. We gonna build, you know, this up. You know, so we're gonna build up white women. We'll make up other groups and stuff like that to take the eyes off of Black people. And that's what they did. Because, you know, all them groups that came up that's been named, that you can name, but we the only ones that still struggle with the same old issues, because that's by design to keep us in that type of situation. Anywho, much love to you and yours. We're gonna keep on. We're gonna finish this book up. We halfway through it. There's probably about like 6 more chapters left at the most. Much love to you and yours. Hit the like button and subscribe to the channel, and also donate to the movement, because we're looking up books like this. I got some more stuff coming down the pipeline that, you know, that's gonna be some damn good stuff on African history here in this land that many people cannot deny. Especially if you're a treaty person that's about, well, look at the treaty, look at the treaty. We're gonna look at these treaties and see what these treaties say. And they might not like what you say. Anyway, subscribe to the channel, donate to the movement. Akoski, Cash App, Akoski. Much love to you and yours. Peace.